thank everybody for coming here today. I wanted to kind of give a quick backdrop on what we're doing with the Healthy Florida First campaign, because I think that that's a big deal, and I think what we're doing with the states, I think can ultimately change the direction of the food industry, which I think is very important based on the evidence that we've been finding from the Department of Health. We're doing this kind of in the backdrop of parents and understanding, particularly this morning, yet again, I went out there and I'm putting together my lunch boxes for the kids, and I'm trying to make the best decisions that I can, right? Because the kids are so picky, and sometimes they hate what I put in the lunchbox. And I pick them up at 3 o'clock, and they're starving because they don't like it. I'm trying to be healthy, but some of the stuff that's packaged, I tried to read the labels to the best of my ability, and I put it in there. And what I've realized is that we are putting things in our children's lunch boxes and on their dinner plates and breakfast and even ourselves based on trust. And trust, that's what's on store shelves, is what it claims to be. Trust in ingredients, in the labels, all of that is so important that that is accurate. And trust that foods marketed to children are not quietly exposing them to harmful chemicals. And that trust is exactly why Florida launched the Healthy Florida First initiative. And it's grounded in transparency, independent testing, and accountability across our food supply. And we began with baby formula because there's no population that is more vulnerable than infants. Through independent testing, the Florida Department of Health found that the majority of the formulas that they tested contained elevated levels of heavy metals, including arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury. And for many babies, formula is the sole source of nutrition during this critical stage of development. That level of exposure is completely unacceptable, and we are doing everything that we can in the free state of Florida to drive accountability for this. We are also making it clear that we're not stopping there. Our next foray was into candy, which is another food group that's heavily consumed by children. Testing there showed elevated levels of arsenic in the majority of traditional, well-known candy brands. These levels become concerning not because of a single piece of candy on one day, but because of how these products are realistically consumed over time. When exposure is evaluated annually and in the context of cumulative intake, even small repeated servings can quickly exceed what the Florida Department of Health says is tolerable level for children over the course of a year. And I think context and perspective matters in all of this. So I wanted to give you a few examples of what we've seen of these candies that was testing positive for elevated levels of arsenic. So take, for instance, Nerds. According to the department's analysis, consuming more than 96 Nerds, the individual granule pieces of Nerds in a year exceeds what is considered a safe annual arsenic exposure for children. But as we know as moms, our kids are not stopping at 96 individual Nerds. If you think about a small box, there's about 2,000 Nerds in there. Or if you think about the big box that my daughter got, not too long ago at the movie theater, that has approximately 8,000 Nerds in it. So you can see quickly how when you're consuming this in aggregate, you are expanding and exacerbating the arsenic level that these kids are consuming. Another example, Swedish fish. The Department of Health determined that more than 8 pieces of Swedish fish can exceed the estimated safe annual arsenic exposure for a child. Yet in a typical small bag, usually between 3 and 5 ounces, there are anywhere from 50 to 100 pieces. Again, stopping at 8 pieces does not reflect real-world consumption. The same with Jolly Ranchers, hard candy. The department's analysis showed that more than 6 pieces can exceed the annual safe threshold for arsenic exposure. A standard 7-ounce bag typically contains anywhere from 30 to 40 pieces of individually wrapped candies, and on it goes through 28 different candies that we tested that were popular that showed these levels of arsenic. And you can find the complete list, including the baby formulas, on exposingfoodtoxins.com. The truth is, families need information to make informed decisions. And yet, with all of this food testing, there is good news. There is a silver lining to all of this, that not all formulas showed elevated levels. Not all candies did either. That tells us something very important, that this is not inevitable. Better sourcing, better manufacturing practices make a difference, and accountability and sunlight works. Healthy Florida First is about the facts, transparency, and empowering parents with truth and working towards change within our food industry. But this conversation is more than just food. As a mother, and surrounded with my fellow mothers and father, I know that parents are constantly navigating decisions about their children's well-being and their health. And those decisions must be guided by truth, by data, by the evidence, and not coercion. Parents deserve accurate, complete information about the benefits, the risks, implications, the data, or the lack thereof when it comes to vaccines. They should be empowered to make informed decisions about their children's well-being without fear of discrimination. No parent should lose their pediatrician. No family should ever be dropped from care. And no parent should be judged or excluded because of their vaccine choices. And unfortunately, that is what we are seeing across the state of Florida. I'm joined by some moms who are going to tell their stories, and I also have several letters from moms who have given this to us saying that they have lost their opportunity to be seen by a pediatrician because of their vaccine choices. Transparency and honesty builds trust, and informed consent is not optional, it is essential. Parents should be empowered with the truth to make informed decisions. Because when they are given the evidence, the data, not partial answers, not pressure, they can make the best informed decisions for their children. And joining us more to talk more about this, yes, I'm surrounded by moms who are going to share their firsthand perspective on all of this, but also our great Surgeon General, Dr. Joe Latipo, to talk a little bit more about this. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Casey. Well, you know, we've been really active in areas of health and health policy during Governor DeSantis' administration, I think in a way that's been, you know, very in service of people. And, you know, a lot of people have appreciated the things that we've done over the years. And, you know, and I, it's one of my favorite parts of the job because, you know, I get a lot of satisfaction and I feel really good about doing what I think is helpful for empowering people, and you know that appreciation is reflected back to us by the people in Florida. And you know, Casey was just talking about our food testing, the infant formula, major findings in terms of elevated levels of you know harmful, you know, no question harmful heavy metals. And most recently, we've talked about candy, which, you know, we've actually heard some feedback from representatives of industry that want to defend the findings. And there are high levels of arsenic. I don't know how people defend that, but somehow, you know, I guess it doesn't stop some people from trying. But, you know, these are just facts. And, you know, we're doing it in service of the people. I myself know I am never eating any more, you know, nerds, for example, or I mean I wouldn't anyway, frankly, because you know, where are those electric colors coming from? You know, they're not coming from the earth; they're coming from a lab. But that's very important information. I certainly wish my parents had that information when I was a kid. And you know, and just in that same vein, you know, we have this issue of people being able to make health choices. There's a lot of controversy right now around medical treatments in general, and one of those fronts is on vaccination policies. That's just that's just part of it. There are a lot of different issues, but that's one of those issues. And you know, there are many places to sort of many ways to think about this, but just from a very basic sense as a physician here with these moms, all these moms here, you know, I came up in the system. I went to Harvard for medical school, all that jazz, and I believed in what we were doing in terms of vaccines as a physician. And I think a lot of people have shifted their belief in the different policies, but one of those policies that, I completely disavow now is, actually I never was fond of it, but this policy of basically, discriminating against people who choose a different, who make a different decision about vaccines, whether or not to get them, or the timing of getting them, or the order of getting them, whatever it is. And unfortunately, while the American people and Floridians, particularly with the COVID-19 pandemic, have shifted toward wanting more information and really having informed consent and recognizing that we don't get complete information. We certainly weren't getting complete information about our baby formula or candy, and there is much more coming down the pipeline. So, we're in early stages of all this. And the same thing has been the case for vaccine policy. There's no question about that. I mean, it was not that long ago when every physician on TV, I guess minus one, or a few others, was saying that your kid had to get an mRNA COVID-19 vaccine. They didn't talk to you about the absence of any data of benefit. They didn't talk to you about safety signals. This country, our leadership during the Biden administration, was in denial about myocarditis and other real harms that young people face from these vaccines that really none of them needed. So this is a time where people want more information. They don't want more coercion. And when pediatricians, and let's be clear, it is literally the American Academy of Pediatrics, the AAP, it is their policy position now to encourage and sanction discrimination of parents who choose not to follow the vaccine schedule. It's published, it's totally out there now. In that setting, they are going in a direction that is completely opposite the direction of the people. The people want more information. They don't want more coercion. And not only is it coercive, but it's actually completely unethical. It is completely unethical to take away the ability of parents, of you, of me, to make an informed decision. And there's no controversy around that in facts. People like to pretend it's not true. But when you're deciding whether you take a medical therapy, you have to, this is enshrined in the ethics that we learn as physicians. You have to be able to make that decision in the absence of coercion. It's literally part of the definition of ethical medical care. So to create a coercive situation, follow the schedule or you don't get care, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's blatantly unethical. And, the thing with ethics is that, there are only two sides. So, my hope is that, and I'm grateful for the lawmakers that we have here in Florida that can see this straight and can see that there's a difference between ethical and unethical practices. And my hope is that they all see it. And I hope that all people see it too. Because however much you want someone to take a vaccine, you just cannot force them to do that and still be in an ethical lane of practice. So I'm really grateful again to all the moms.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Latipo. I think we'll bring in some of the moms now to talk firsthand about their experiences, their difficulties finding a pediatrician, and we'll start with Mary Beth Tyson, because Mary Beth, you can talk about your son. You have so much data that you have in front of you on all of the trials and tribulations that he's had over the course of his life. No one knows your son better than you. And so trying to find good care for him, you said, has been a challenge.
Absolutely. I started out this life of being a mom, like most moms. You come in and you want to have kids and you want them to go to the local schools and you want them to play. In my case, I have 3 boys. I wanted them to play in the local Little League baseball teams. And my first son was actually born unexpectedly with Down syndrome. He was diagnosed at birth. That definitely threw us for a loop. But it also changed. I said I definitely want more than 1 or 2. I'd like to have a few kids, and I want to have them pretty close together. So my second son was born 14 months after him. And he was born over 9 pounds. Maybe they say this to all the moms, but they just were like, wow, look at this kid, look at his muscles. I mean, he planked up and they were washing him or whatever. And I had it all figured out. I knew the best car seat, and I knew everything, I said I took a little bit of a hippie approach. I nursed for probably longer than most, not too long, but maybe within a year. And when he did start eating food, we were really strict about what he ate. No screen time, no dyes, play outside without shoes, all of that. And I always said, oh, I'm taking a holistic approach to mother, being a mom. And for 18 months, I vaccinated him. And within 5 days, he changed. And I took him back to the doctor, and I said, he's not okay. And they said, oh, his model is his older brother, he has Down syndrome, so his language is a little delayed because that's his model. And I thought, gosh, my husband and I, all we do is talk. I mean, he's hearing, communication all day, that this shouldn't be the case. But the thing that happened with him is he went into what I would call the worst terrible twos I could possibly imagine. He didn't throw himself on the floor because I broke his banana in half. He threw himself on the floor all day long. If he was awake, he was screaming. And I just begged someone to tell me this, because when you're the mom, you know, and you don't want to know. So it's easy to deny there's something wrong, but you have to face the facts. So we went into, I went and asked his local pediatrician. I think it's 5 days after he had this small seizure. It has to be this. And she said, those doctors that believe that, they are quacks. If you don't vaccinate, you cannot stay with us. So that's how strongly I believe in these shots, that if you don't do it, you cannot stay with us. So I started to search, and then she convinced me, and we did another round of vaccines, and it got worse. And that's when I said, and I'm so embarrassed that it took that I didn't stop right away. But that's when I quickly went into a completely different mode, and we had to go out of town to find a pediatrician for my entire family that does not take insurance, so it's all out of pocket. Now, I would like to say that is not something that most Americans can do, travel out of town and pay out of pocket for care for your children. That's almost impossible for most people. So we have a great privilege that we're able to do that. And I've done the amount of work we've done for him for the last 12 years. In fact, he said, Mom, why are you so dressed up? So he's in school finally. We're doing okay. And I told him what we were doing. He's like, is this about me? So along the way, we did a genetic test on him. And this is 140 pages of his genes. And this will tell you every single thing about him that I need to know about his genes. It tells me his nutrition that he should have, the toxins he shouldn't have. And nothing is wrong with these genes. These genes have been around since, I guess I would assume, the beginning of time. I don't know if genes evolved. I don't know how genes work. But there's nothing wrong with these genes. But with our modern day toxins, I've had to become very informed about what he can have in his body and what he cannot. And when I go to a pediatrician, if they have a one-size-fits-all protocol, and I have this, I'm going to go by this, not the one-size-fits-all that is given out to every single child. Because I can look at this right here and say he can't have stimulants. Even if he has ADHD, stimulants will make him irritable and anxious, so he can't have stimulants. But it also tells me that there's some vaccines he probably shouldn't have, because he's not going to be able to detox them the appropriate way. This is our children. They have all of these genes. And as moms, we know our kids. And even if we can't do a genetic test, we can question our doctors. And I'm not comfortable with this, and I feel like we should have that right, because this one-size-fits-all is what injured my very healthy, capable, very strong baby. And it's taken me 12 years to actually be able to even get him to where he is now, and we're still healing him. And just that one choice I made.
Thank you, Mary Beth. I appreciate that. Caitlin Sowers, talk a little bit about your story.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and for creating the space for thoughtful and respectful discussion. My name is Caitlin. I'm a born and raised Floridian and a mom of two. Like every parent, my husband and I want our children to be healthy, safe, and able to thrive. Every medical decision we make for them is made carefully, intentionally, and with a deep sense of responsibility. When I got pregnant back in 2021, I started doing a lot of research, more than I ever did when I was in high school. And we made the decision not to vaccinate our child. I recognize that families acting with the same care and good intentions make different choices, and I respect that. But we don't always feel that we get the same respect, especially when it came to trying to find a pediatrician. At the time, we lived in a larger metro city, and there were a few pediatricians that would accept non-vaccinated children. However, there were so few, and there were so many children that were not vaccinated that none of them were accepting new patients at the time. So even if there was a solution, it wasn't a solution for us because they were already full, taking care of other kids that were not vaccinated. So we were able to finally find a pediatrician who accepted us, although it was very clear through the course of our well checkups at 2 months, at 4 months, at 6 months, that our decisions were not respected. It was really hard to achieve collaborative health care when you can tell that you're not wanted, that they don't respect you, that they don't want to have a conversation about why we decided to do something differently. So then a few years later, we moved back to a smaller rural town, and then it became almost impossible to find a pediatrician that would accept our choices and respect parental rights. Through a lot of asking, a lot of word of mouth, I finally found a pediatrician that I thought we aligned on, sent them my records, made a well checkup for my 3-year-old, got there, and they said, hey, we got everything from your prior pediatrician except for the vaccination records. I said, oh, that's because there aren't any. And they said, oh, okay, stay in this waiting room, we'll be right back. And I just was like, this is not good. So the nurse came back in and said, hey, we can't see you. And I was not asking for anything out of the ordinary. It was just a routine checkup for my 3-year-old just to make sure he was meeting his marks and growing accordingly. And they essentially said, we cannot see you, there's the door. And that's been the story, especially in a small town where we have even less choice, is that we just feel that we're being judged and not able to have a conversation. Whether it's you want to delay, you want to have a few, you don't want to do any. It's really, really hard, especially when those choices are almost non-existent in smaller towns in Florida. And it's going to continue to be an issue where, I mean, we even to this day, we don't have a pediatrician. I finally was able to find a family doctor. And if you're a mom, it's a little bit different level of care. I would love a pediatrician that would see us. It's not a solution we've been able to find right now. And I'm really hoping that changes through the course of what you guys are working for. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Caitlin. Appreciate it. All right, Jenna?
Good morning. My name is Jenna Williams. Thank you, First Lady and Dr. Latipo, for working and empowering women and parents in the state of Florida for parental freedom, so for medical freedom. So I'm a young mom to an almost 2-year-old, and like many moms, we research for our baby's arrival to be able to make the best decisions for them. And when my baby arrived, the doctors were asking, are you going to get him vaccinated? And we decided not to. And it's not that we decided not to. We wanted to wait, and we wanted to talk to doctors, and we wanted to ask questions. And so we wanted to wait until our first appointment with our pediatrician. But the issue was the hospital wouldn't release us until we had an appointment with the pediatrician. So we called pediatricians around, and they wouldn't accept us because we didn't get our child vaccinated at the hospital, and because we said we didn't know if we wanted to get him vaccinated at the very first appointment, but we were open to a delayed schedule and just talking about it. But they said that that was not acceptable. And so we ended up finding a family doctor, and we're really grateful that a family doctor accepted us. But we prefer, just like Caitlin, to go to a pediatrician because they're experts in that area. And so that was very frustrating. And this is a story that many of my friends and even siblings have with their children as well. So, yes. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Susan?
Thank you. My name is Susan Sweeten. I'm a Florida mother and a healthcare advocate. Before I begin, I also want to thank the First Lady and the Surgeon General and for everyone here that decided to come and listen to mothers like mine and the ones around me, because this is this opportunity that we've never actually had before in this country, at least not in my generation. I'm here today because my son was injured after I was coerced into consenting to a medical intervention I did not want, I did not need, and I did not fully understand. 5 hours after my son was born, a nurse casually told me that he'd be receiving the hepatitis B vaccine at birth. When I questioned it, I was told that if I refused, my pediatrician would not see him and I wouldn't know if he was deaf, dumb, or blind. That is not informed consent. That is coercion. In that moment, I was not treated as a mother. I was treated as an obstacle to hospital policy. Within an hour of that injection, my son stopped breathing and turned purple. When I raised concern, I was dismissed. Over the months that followed that experience, repeated apnea, neurological symptoms, and developmental challenges continue to this day. Over the next year, we were dismissed by 6 pediatricians for refusing to continue to vaccinate him. I met with 6 different providers, and everyone dismissed my concerns. Finally, a functional pediatrician listened. She opened up the manufacturer's package insert and showed me apnea was listed as an adverse reaction. As my son has grown, additional neurological symptoms have appeared: hand flapping, extreme noise sensitivity, facial, eye, and throat tics, all consistent with neurological injury and heavy metal exposure. Today, at 9, he attends therapy 4 times a week and is compensating for a neurological injury that began on his first day of life. He wanted to be here today, and I wanted to acknowledge his courage because he's the reason I'm in this work. But what matters most for this discussion today is that I was never given true informed consent. No risks were explained, no alternatives were offered, and no real choice existed. The power imbalance between medical institutions and new parents, as you heard this morning, is extreme. When hospitals and clinics control access to care, they control parental behavior through fear. Parents comply not because they agree, but because they are afraid. Afraid their child will not be seen, afraid they will be labeled as difficult, afraid they'll lose access to care. This is not consent, this is institutional coercion. And this is not anecdotal. Federal law once required far more detailed for vaccine risk disclosure than parents receive today. It's 1 page. I'm looking at something here that's from 1991 that if printed on normal paper would at least be 8 pages. That's what was given. That shift has fundamentally weakened informed consent nationwide. Over time, families have begun seeking me out because they could not find providers who respected their medical choices without discrimination. As a result, I personally have over 300 Florida families who have been dismissed, denied care, pressured or threatened by providers and hospitals due to the vaccination-related policies. And not all of them wanted to refuse. They either wanted to delay or just not get the COVID. This is not isolated. This is systemic. The consistent thread across these stories is not disagreement with medicine. It's the collapse of informed consent and the replacement of parental authority with institutional control. Florida currently tracks every vaccination dose administered, but not whether adverse events are being properly recognized, documented, or reported. That means our vaccine safety surveillance system is operating largely blind. That is why a medical freedom bill matters, because it restores something essential: the right to parents to make medical decisions without threat, punishment, or denial of care. It restores informed consent, parental authority, clinical transparency, and medical non-discrimination. When parents lose authority in medical settings, children lose protections. Florida has the opportunity to lead the nation by reaffirming that parents, not institutions, hold authority over their children's medical care. That is why I'm here, and that is why I support the conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you guys thank you to the moms for sharing your stories. I mean, it's really heartbreaking. And it is, it's I don't know, it's just so it's so difficult because I know that, moms are special, and, dads have their relationship with their kids, but moms have a special relationship with their kids, and, I feel badly because I know that some of the moms here feel badly about the decisions that, that they made and the setting in which they made them. It was coercive. And, I feel just, it's just a very difficult, it's a very difficult dynamic. And if we didn't have, it emphasizes, it just reinforces how important it is to get out of this, like nothing good ultimately will come from coercion. It creates all this distrust. It creates these situations where folks are, where there's regret and there's resentment toward an unethical medical system and paradigm, and it also weakens the relationship between clinicians and patients, and there's just nothing good that could come out of this. So I am hopeful that we're really able to pass this in Florida and end this terrible practice in this state, and hopefully others will follow.
Yeah, and my heart is there because as a mom, I have right now a 9, 7, and a 5-year-old. Like, there is nothing I would not do for my children, right? And you want to make the best decisions for your family based on the evidence and the data and the truth, and give me that, and then I will make a decision. And I think that it's so important that families are empowered with the truth, what we know, and quite frankly, what we don't know, and then allowing them to make that informed consent. And I think that's basically where we are. And the truth is that families are being discriminated against based on their vaccine status. These are some of the letters. There are more families. You have 300 families. They deserve to be able to have their children seen by a pediatrician. And right now, they don't know what to do or where to go. And some of them are nervous and afraid to come and speak out. So I applaud these moms for being here, doing the right things that they feel for their families. And hopefully we can make sure in the state of Florida that no family is discriminated against based on their vaccine status. So I thank you all for being here, and I appreciate the time to have this conversation.